The 12 silences we know what matter is, we have known with increasing precision for over a century. Matter is composed of atoms. Atoms are composed of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons and neutrons are composed of quarks. Quarks and electrons are fundamental particles described by the Standard Model of Particle Physics, a theoretical framework so precisely confirmed that its predictions match experimental measurements to more than 10 decimal places. The Standard Model is not a hypothesis. It is not a working approximation pending better data. It is the most thoroughly tested scientific theory in the history of human knowledge. It describes every particle we have ever detected, every force we have ever measured except gravity, and every interaction we have ever observed at the fundamental level. We built particle accelerators capable of probing matter at energies a billion times higher than the binding energy of atoms, and the Standard Model described everything we found with mathematical precision that defies ordinary language. We know what matter is. We know how it behaves. We know the rules. And then there is the measurement problem. It begins with a fact that every physicist knows and most prefer not to think about too carefully. In quantum mechanics, a particle does not have a definite position, a definite momentum, or a definite spin until it is measured. Before measurement, the particle exists in a superposition of all possible states simultaneously, described mathematically by a wave function that assigns a probability amplitude to each possible outcome. The wave function is not a description of our ignorance about the particle's actual state. It is not the case that the particle has a definite position and we simply do not know what it is. This was definitively established by experiments testing Bell's inequalities, beginning with John Bell's theoretical work in 1964 and confirmed experimentally by Alain Aspect in 1982 and by dozens of subsequent experiments with increasing precision. The particle genuinely has no definite state before measurement. And then measurement happens, and the wave function collapses, and the particle suddenly has a definite state. This process, the collapse of the wave function upon measurement, is not described by any equation in quantum mechanics. The Schrödinger equation, which governs the time evolution of quantum systems, is smooth and deterministic. Wave function collapse is neither. It is instantaneous, non-local, and probabilistic. Quantum mechanics contains a complete description of everything that happens before a measurement and a complete description of everything that happens after. It contains no description whatsoever of the measurement process itself. The most successful physical theory in history has a hole at its center. Every explanation that has been proposed to fill this hole has either failed experimentally, introduced assumptions more troubling than the problem it solves, or dissolved the problem by denying that it exists. The Copenhagen interpretation, the orthodox position of most working physicists for most of the 20th century, simply says that the wave function collapses upon measurement and that asking what happens during the collapse is not a meaningful physical question. This is not an explanation. It is a methodological prohibition. It tells physicists to use the formalism without asking what the formalism describes. For decades, this was sufficient for practical purposes because quantum mechanics works spectacularly and consistently, and the measurement problem does not prevent any calculation or any prediction. But it is not a resolution of the anomaly. It is an instruction to stop asking. And stopping asking has never, in the history of physics, produced a true understanding of anything. The second mystery is quantum entanglement. Two particles interact and become entangled. They are then separated by an arbitrarily large distance. When the state of one particle is measured, the state of the other particle is instantly determined, regardless of the distance between them. This has been confirmed experimentally over distances of more than 1,200 kilometers in experiments conducted by Chinese physicists using the Michus satellite in 2017. The correlation is instantaneous. It does not diminish with distance. It cannot be explained by any signal traveling between the particles at any finite speed. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance and spent the next decades of his life trying to prove it was not real. He failed. It is real. The no communication theorem in quantum information theory proves that entanglement cannot be used to transmit information faster than light, which preserves the consistency of special relativity. But the no communication theorem does not explain how the correlation is established instantaneously across arbitrary distances. Something connects the two particles. Something ensures that when one is measured, the other immediately knows. Physics has no name for what that something is. It has no equation describing it. It has only the observed correlation and the proof that no local hidden variable theory can explain it. The universe is non-local in a specific and measurable way, and we do not know why. The third mystery is the double-slit experiment and the role of the observer. A single particle fired at a barrier with two slits produces an interference pattern on a detector screen behind the barrier as though it passes through both slits simultaneously and interferes with itself. This is the wave behavior of matter, predicted by quantum mechanics and confirmed by experiment. But when a detector is placed at one of the slits to determine which slit the particle passes through, the interference pattern disappears. The particle behaves as though it knows it is being observed and changes its behavior accordingly. The observation, the measurement, the act of determining which path the particle took eliminates the quantum superposition. This is not a disturbance effect. Experiments have been designed to make the detection as gentle as possible, to minimize any physical interaction between the detector and the particle, and the interference pattern still disappears the moment which path information becomes available. It is not the physical interaction of the detector that destroys the interference. It is the existence of information. When the universe contains information about which path the particle took, it behaves differently than when it does not. Information, not energy or momentum, is the relevant variable. And physics does not have a theory of why information affects physical reality at the quantum level. It has the observation. It has the mathematics. It does not have the explanation. The fourth mystery is the quantum Zeno effect. Quantum mechanics predicts and experiment confirms that a quantum system that is observed continuously does not evolve. An unstable particle that is measured frequently enough never decays. The act of repeated observation freezes the time evolution of the quantum system. The Schrödinger equation describes how quantum systems evolve in the absence of measurement. It has no term for observation, but observation stops evolution. This means that the absence of a term for observation in our fundamental equation of quantum evolution is not merely a mathematical inconvenience. It means that our fundamental equation is incomplete. It describes what happens when nobody is looking and fails completely to describe what happens when somebody is. A physical law that depends on whether anyone is paying attention is not a physical law in any sense that the history of science would recognize. The fifth mystery is quantum tunneling. A particle encountering a potential energy barrier it classically lacks the energy to cross will nonetheless cross it with a non-zero probability determined by quantum mechanics. This is not a metaphor or an approximation. Quantum tunneling is directly responsible for nuclear fusion in stars, for the functioning of transistors in every electronic device on Earth, and for certain chemical reactions in biological systems, including enzyme catalysis. It has been measured, engineered, and exploited. It is real. What is not understood is how the particle crosses the barrier. The question of how long quantum tunneling takes, the tunneling time, has been actively debated for decades and has no agreed resolution. Experiments by Ephraim Steinberg at the University of Toronto and more recent experiments by Ursula Keller at ETH Zurich have produced results suggesting that the tunneling time is either zero or imaginary in a mathematical sense. A particle appears to cross a barrier in zero time or in a time that does not have a straightforward physical interpretation. Something is happening during tunneling that our equations do not describe. The particle is not in the classically forbidden region, and then it is out the other side, and the transit appears to require no time. This is not merely counterintuitive. It is, in the precise technical sense, unexplained. The sixth mystery is quantum coherence in biological systems. For most of the history of quantum mechanics, it was assumed that quantum effects were relevant only in isolated, cold, carefully controlled laboratory conditions. The thermal noise of biological systems at body temperature was assumed to destroy quantum coherence almost instantly, before any biological process could exploit it. This assumption was overturned by experiments beginning in 2007 showing quantum coherence in the light harvesting complexes of photosynthetic bacteria. The bacterium appears to use quantum superposition to simultaneously sample multiple energy transfer pathways and find the most efficient one. Subsequent experiments found evidence of quantum effects in bird navigation, in enzyme catalysis, and potentially in the olfactory system. Life appears to have evolved to exploit quantum mechanics in warm, wet, noisy biological environments where quantum coherence should not survive for any meaningful time. How biological systems maintain quantum coherence against thermal decoherence is not understood. The timescales involved are incompatible with naive calculations of decoherence times. Something in the biological environment is protecting quantum coherence, or biology has found a way to exploit quantum effects faster than decoherence destroys them, and neither explanation has been theoretically demonstrated with the rigor the question demands. The seventh mystery is the quantum vacuum and the zero-point energy. Quantum field theory, the relativistic generalization of quantum mechanics, predicts that empty space is not empty. It is filled with quantum fields that fluctuate at every point, and these fluctuations have energy. The zero-point energy of the quantum vacuum, the lowest possible energy of a quantum field, is not zero. Summing the contributions of all quantum fields to the vacuum energy density produces a number that is finite only if an ultraviolet cutoff is imposed, but even with a cutoff at the Planck scale, the predicted vacuum energy density is approximately 10 to the power of 120 times larger than the measured value of the cosmological constant. This is the largest discrepancy between theoretical prediction and experimental observation in the history of physics. The universe should, according to quantum field theory, have an energy density so large that it would have torn itself apart microseconds after the Big Bang. Instead, the cosmological constant is small enough to allow galaxies, stars, planets, and observers to exist. No mechanism has been identified that could suppress the vacuum energy by a factor of 10 to the 120 while leaving a small, positive residual. Every proposed solution either introduces fine-tuning of comparable or greater magnitude, invokes anthropic reasoning that explains our observation without predicting it, or requires new physics whose experimental signatures have not been found. The eighth mystery is the spin statistics theorem and why it is true. The spin statistics theorem states that particles with half-integer spin are fermions that obey the Pauli exclusion principle, while particles with integer spin are bosons that can occupy the same quantum state. This is the reason matter takes up space and why atoms can form stable structures. It is the foundation of chemistry and of solid matter. It can be derived from the axioms of relativistic quantum field theory, and the derivation requires both relativity and quantum mechanics in an essential way. But the physical reason why spin and statistics are connected, the deep intuitive explanation for why the universe is built this way, does not exist. The proof is mathematical. The physical explanation is absent. We know that nature works this way because everything we observe is consistent with it. We do not know why nature is required to work this way. An axiom in physics that has no physical justification, that can only be derived from other axioms and not from any more fundamental principle, is a description of reality, not an explanation of it. The ninth mystery is quantum gravity and the incompatibility at the Planck scale. General relativity describes gravity as the curvature of spacetime caused by mass and energy. Quantum mechanics describes the behavior of matter and energy in a fixed spacetime background. The two theories are separately the most precisely confirmed theories in physics. They are also mathematically incompatible. Attempts to quantize gravity, to construct a quantum field theory of the gravitational field consistent with general relativity, produce infinities that cannot be renormalized by any technique that works for the other forces. String theory and loop quantum gravity offer mathematical frameworks that might resolve the incompatibility, but neither has produced a confirmed experimental prediction that distinguishes it from the standard theories. At the Planck scale, approximately 10 to the negative 35 meters, spacetime itself is expected to become a quantum foam of fluctuating geometry. What happens there, what the structure of spacetime is at the smallest scales, is completely unknown. The black hole singularity and the Big Bang singularity are both points where general relativity breaks down and quantum effects should dominate. And we have no theory that is valid there. The foundations of physical reality, at the smallest scales and at the highest energies, are inaccessible to any theory we currently possess. The 10th mystery is the arrow of time. The fundamental laws of physics, including quantum mechanics, are time-symmetric. They work equally well run forward or backward. The Schrödinger equation, the equations of quantum electrodynamics, the standard model interactions, all are invariant under time reversal with minor exceptions. And yet time has a direction. Entropy increases. The past is fixed and the future is open. Memories point backward and cause precede effects. The thermodynamic arrow of time emerges from the statistical behavior of large numbers of particles and the low-entropy initial conditions of the universe. But the low-entropy initial conditions of the universe are themselves unexplained, and the explanation of the arrow of time in terms of those initial conditions is circular. We observe that time has a direction. We do not know why the universe began in a state of low entropy. We do not know whether the arrow of time is fundamental or emergent. And quantum mechanics, our best theory of the microscopic world, offers no answer, because it does not distinguish the past from the future at the fundamental level. The 11th mystery is consciousness and the hard problem. Quantum mechanics assigns a central role to measurement, and measurement requires an observer. But quantum mechanics does not define what an observer is. It does not describe when a measuring device becomes sufficient to collapse the wave function, or whether a human consciousness is required, or whether any physical interaction constitutes measurement. The boundary between quantum and classical, the cut between the measured and the unmeasured, is not defined by the theory. Some physicists have proposed that consciousness plays a fundamental role in wave function collapse, that the subjective experience of an observer is physically relevant. This view, associated with figures including Eugene Wigner, and more recently with quantum consciousness proposals by Penrose and Hameroff, has no experimental confirmation. But the alternative, that wave function collapse is fully objective and requires no observer, has no satisfactory formulation either. The many worlds interpretation avoids collapse entirely by positing that every measurement causes the universe to split into branches, each containing one outcome. This resolves the measurement problem by denying that collapse occurs. But it raises questions about the origin of probability, about the physical status of the other branches, and about what it means for a universe to split. Questions for which the many worlds interpretation offers mathematical consistency, but no physical clarity. The 12th mystery is the one that contains all the others, and that makes the full inventory of quantum mysteries coherent rather than coincidental. Every mystery on this list, the measurement problem, entanglement, the observer effect, the Zeno effect, tunneling time, biological coherence, vacuum energy, spin statistics, quantum gravity, the arrow of time, and consciousness, shares a single feature. Each one is a place where the formalism of quantum mechanics produces correct predictions and offers no physical explanation. Quantum mechanics tells us what will happen with extraordinary precision. It does not tell us why. It does not tell us what reality is doing between measurements. It does not tell us what the wave function represents. It does not tell us whether the world is fundamentally discrete or continuous, local or non-local, deterministic or genuinely random. The most successful physical theory in history is a black box. Input a physical situation and receive a correct probability distribution for every possible outcome. Do not look inside the box. Do not ask what is happening inside the box. The box will not answer, and the history of every attempt to look inside suggests that what is inside the box is not something our current conceptual vocabulary can accommodate. The universe, at its most fundamental level, appears to be doing something that produces the appearance of a physical world for observers within it without being, in any sense we can currently articulate, a physical world in the way we mean when we use the word. What it is instead, what is actually happening at the level of quantum reality below the level accessible to any measurement, is the question that every mystery on this list is asking in a different language. And the quietest and most unsettling possibility, the one that the complete inventory of quantum mysteries points toward without stating directly, is that the question has an answer, and that the answer is one that the universe will allow us to approach asymptotically, getting closer and closer to understanding, refining our theories and our instruments across centuries of effort, and never quite arriving, because the final answer requires stepping outside the system, and we are inside it, and the inside is all there is, and the question of what it looks like from outside is one that no measurement made from inside can ever answer. And we will keep asking, and the universe will keep producing correct predictions, and the silence at the center of quantum mechanics will remain exactly what it has always been, the most precisely measured mystery in the history of science.